In this video, we'll be going over exam 2 topics/questions. Our first question says, which expression results in negative 6? I have all these different expressions here, and some of them have fractions, some of them have decimals. The easiest way to do this problem is by using a calculator. So I'm going to pull open my calculator really quick. Always remember that the calculator I recommend and that I always use is this one right here, desmos.com/scientific. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of these answer choices and see which one gives us -6. When we're typing these in, it is so important to remember to keep what you're typing in here to look exactly the same as what it looks like here. So my parentheses and my negatives and my fractions all look identical. If they do not look identical, you're not getting the right answer, so always keep that in mind. Times 12/2. So far I have not gotten a -6. Oop, we got one. So this -30 times 0.2 resulted in -6. So that means that for this first question here, C would be correct. Our next question, Ryan is multiplying 8 times -4 times 1/2. The second step of his work follows. So it looks like blank 1 is blank. Step 1 is blank, we don't know yet. And on step 2, he multiplied 8 by -2. We want to know which answer correctly fills in the blank to show the first step he must have taken. Okay, well, if I'm looking at what I have here, I have 8, -4, and 1/2. If I don't touch the 8, that's going to leave me the 8 next. Right? Because say if I were to multiply these two together, I would have -32, and this would be times 1/2. But I know that he did 8 times -2, so that cannot be correct. So that means that what he had to have done here was he had to have multiplied these two numbers first. If he were to bring down his 8, and he would have done -4 times 1/2. And we actually don't necessarily need to solve this all the way through, we just need to know what he multiplied. So here he multiplied by that -4 and 1/2, which would give us 2. Sorry, -2. Next question says that Tristan earns $15 per hour for babysitting. He correctly represents his earnings with the following equation. 15 times 5 equals 75. What does the 5 represent in the equation? Okay, it says here that he earns $15 per hour for babysitting. So this 15 is money. Think about if you were to babysit for 2 hours and you were Tristan and you earned $15 per hour, you would earn $30, correct? Which means that this 75 on the end is his total, which means that this 5 here has to be the number of hours that he worked. He did not earn a total of $5, right? That would be a really good deal for whoever's paying him, but not a good deal for Tristan. The $5 he spent on lunch, that doesn't really make sense here because, well, he's babysitting, and he left 5 hours early. I hope that Tristan does not leave 5 hours early, otherwise he would not probably be getting another babysitting job soon. So this answer here is the one that makes the most sense. It is also correct. Our next question is 10 times -1/2 times -6. We want to know what would be an appropriate step to begin to solve this problem. Select 2 answers that apply. Remember that when you are multiplying, the order in which you multiply your numbers doesn't matter. So if I have 10 times 1/2 times -6, I could choose to multiply these two first, right? This is negative, sorry. So I have 10 over 1 times -1 over 2. When I multiply straight across the top, 10 times 1 is 10. 10 times 1 times 2 is 2, and this is negative. That is this one right here. So that is one option I could do. The next thing that I could do is I could also multiply these two first. right? If I were to do negative 1/2 times negative 6, that is this step right here. Negative 1/2 times negative 6. And this would give me a positive 3. However, I don't necessarily... Oh, whoops. This should be positive 3. I made a mistake when I was doing my answer key. So I apologize. This would be a positive 3. However, you do get the point here though. You are picking two different numbers to multiply. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, I don't think that was a typo. I'm thinking that this one right here is the correct one. Because remember, again, with order, it doesn't matter. So if I were to choose to leave that fraction for the end, because I don't really like fractions and I want to do just the whole numbers, I can do this 10 times negative 6. And that gives me a negative 60, which is what I have here. So double check on your exam that you're also making sure that the sign of your answer makes sense. Okay, and if you're struggling with that a little bit or want to be extra sure, type it into a calculator to make sure that the sign of your answer is what it should be. To win a prize in a math contest, an individual must correctly fill in the blank. Well, it looks like here I just need to solve this problem. There's two ways we could do this. Way one is distribution, where I take this negative 6 and I multiply it to everything inside. So I'd have negative 6 times 2 minus negative 6 times 7. This would be negative 12 minus negative 42. I do keep change opposite here because I'm subtracting. And I do my subtraction because they're different signs and I get 30. The other way to do this, and I think for this one is a little bit faster, is order of operations or PEMDAS. I have the same problem, but PEMDAS tells me to solve what's inside my parentheses first. 2 minus 7 is negative 5, and negative 6 times negative 5 is positive 30. Guys, on this problem, you can also double check it a third time by typing this into a calculator. Negative 6 times 2 minus 7 also gives me 30. So on this problem here, there's 3 different ways you can solve it. This calculator is a great way to double check your work if you want to do one of the 2 original methods first. Next question says that John claims the following 2 equations are equivalent. Let's see. Okay, so he says negative 2 times 6y minus 4 is equal to negative 12 minus 8. John's work in determining an expression equivalent to the first expression is shown below. Alright, so it looks like he's taking this negative 2 and multiplying it to 6, which is good. Minus sign in the middle, which is good. And then he has a negative 2 times a negative 4. Okay, I see a part right here that he might have gotten confused on. Remember that when we are distributing, okay, so I have negative 2 times 6y. My minus sign comes down, which means that this 4 is not attached to it anymore. So I would then have negative 2 times a positive 4, which I'm going to continue this over here. I'd have negative 12y minus a negative 8. This double negative here should give me a plus. So I'd have negative 12 plus 8, which this one here should be an 8. So what he should have done was he should have subtracted negative 2 times 4. That is what he needed to do. He needed to subtract here and not multiply it by that negative. Oh wait, let me reread here. He should have multiplied 4 by negative 2. Sorry, I'm just double checking and reading through all of these before I jump too far ahead. Because what we did was, our error was in this multiplication here, not the subtraction, right? So make sure you're always reading through your answers carefully. So that means that he should have multiplied 4 by negative 2, and then that results in the expression negative 12y plus 8. You know what? I'm second guessing myself, and I just double checked. The first one is correct that we had said. So it's the one about the subtraction. You should have subtracted this. I'm so sorry. Sometimes I second guess myself on these questions too. You guys aren't the only ones. So just take your time and think about it. We want to know, what is the quotient of the following expression, 15 over negative 5? This one should be a freebie, guys. All you need to do is divide these two, and if you're not 100% sure about your division rules with negatives, you can type this one in. Look at that, negative 3. Answer is negative 3. Woo! And I'm done with that question. Next one wants us to select two of the fractions that are equivalent to negative 4 over 3. Now, on this one, you guys need to be so careful with the numbers that you are given, okay? Notice how on B, I have a 2 in my denominator here, but I have a 3 in my denominator in the problem in my equation, which means that any problem that has a 2 or any number that's not a 4 and a 3 in the same order is automatically wrong. Okay? The next thing I want to look for is, well, this expression up here, this fraction only has one negative sign. Since it has 1, remember that 1 is odd, which means our final answer is going to be negative. So we want our answer choices to also be negative. I am picking the two fractions that have a 4 in the numerator and a 3 in my denominator, and also both only have one negative sign. Number or letter A up here, notice how A has two negatives, which means that one is not equivalent. Dwight owns 2,400 acres of farmland. He wants to split the land into fourths and sell it off. Each expression shows the amount of acres in which expression shows the amount of acres that each parcel will contain? Okay, well, these ones are set up a little bit weird. If I were to be thinking, well, I have 24,000 total, and I want to split it into fourths, I would just divide it by 4, right? It's kind of like when you have this whole pizza and you have 4 friends, you're like, okay, well, let's cut it into 4 sections like this. I'm dividing it into 4 pieces. However, none of these answer choices look exactly like that, but I know that this line here represents division. So I'm looking at either B or I'm looking at E right now. Okay, if I were to kind of take this and rewrite it from top to bottom, I would have 2,400 divided by 4, which is this one right here. Remember that when you are doing division, even though I don't have a fraction, I could make 4 into a fraction, right? And I could put it over 1. Anything over 1 is itself. If I were to change this KFC, which is what we do with fractions when we're dividing, I keep my first, I flip my division into multiplication, and then I change this last one into 1/4. And I have this one right here. That is the other expression that works. So there are two expressions that work. One is where I'm dividing by 4, and the other is where I am multiplying by 1/4. Next one says, which fraction gives a decimal whose non-zero digits repeat infinitely many times? Okay. Essentially what this question is asking is, which one of these fractions is going to give me a repeating decimal that goes on forever? And the way to do that is just to type them all in and see which ones do that. So if I notice when I type all these into my calculator, this is 1.8, that ends, 1.5, that ends. This third one here, I have 0.7, and the 7s keep going forever and ever, and then I have this 8, so our calculator just rounded up because the 7s will go on forever, and I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't want 7s to show up on my computer screen forever, because that's what would happen. And this bottom one, 0.875, even though it has 3 decimals, it still ends, right? There's no more repeating, which means that C is our decimal that repeats infinitely. Oops. It repeats infinitely. Again, for this one, type it into a calculator. Alrighty, this one here is, oops, I forgot to change the expression. Let me do that now. This should say 198 over 98. Oops, over 18. Okay, so we want to know which equation correctly simplifies 198 over 18. And we want to select all that apply. Remember, guys, that when I said when you have a fraction and you're trying to break it up into two smaller pieces, you always want to add them together. So the first ones I'm going to look at is B and D, because both of those have addition. Now, if you remember your rules, when we're adding with fractions, we have one thing that needs to be the same on both in order to add them together. Hopefully you're going, the denominator or the bottom of the fractions have to have the same number in order for us to add them together. And if I look here at B, right, this 18 is in the bottom of both. In D, however, I have a 10 and an 8. So D cannot work because I can't add those fractions together since they don't have a common denominator. So B is one of the answers here. The next one that we could do is, what we could also do instead is we could leave our denominator the way it is with that 18, and we can try and break up the numerator. And when we're breaking up the numerator, we are trying to see, well, what numbers can I kind of pull apart and factor into, meaning what two numbers do I multiply together to get 198? Okay, on this step here, what I would recommend, I'll tell you right off the bat, it's not A. I would take this second part right here and this second part right here and type those into a calculator. One will give you an answer of 11 and one will not. The answer that gives you 11 is the other correct one. And here it is C. If I look 9 over 9, that simplifies to just 1. 22 over 2, that'll simplify to 11. 1 times 11 is 11. So this one's a little bit tricky just because there's a lot to look at. But again, if you just look through each of the steps and simplify it with the problem, you'll be able to figure out which one will give you the right answer. All right, our last problem. It says that Mitch bought 5 books for $68.75. 4 of the books were sports books and cost the same price. The other book was a novel that cost $7 less than each of the sports books. How much did each sports book cost? All right. Okay, well, with this problem here, I would 100 out of 10 recommend working backwards, okay? And what I mean by that is I know that Mitch spent a total of $68.75 on a total of 5 books, right? He bought 4 sports books and 1 novel book. So that means that if I were to say I chose C here as my answer, C does not make sense because C is saying that I'm spending $61.75 on every single book. But that can't be right because I bought 5 of them. And if I bought 5 at $61, I would spend way over $300. So C cannot be correct. $7 is also a little bit too low. If I think, well, if I spent $7 on each book, 7 times 5 is 35. So that can't be it either. So now I'm left with these two different answer choices, 18.95 and 15.15. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to multiply both of them by 5. And the reason why I'm multiplying both of them by 5 is because that is how many books that he bought. And I'm not necessarily looking to get this answer up here. I just want to get as close to it without going over. So 18.94 times 5 and 15.15 times 5. Well, if I look here, 97 or 94.7, this one is way over. However, this 75.75 is looking good. And it tells me that the novel that Mitch bought was $7 less. Less is another word for subtraction. If I subtract 7 from this, I get that $68.75, which means that 1515 is the correct amount. All right, that is all that I have for this unit exam review. So if you would like another attempt on your exam, you are more than welcome to send me an email or a message and I will reopen it for you.